When the doubt gets loud, but answer that call. Vision ain't real till you grind at speed, so breathing deep. Then call the damn leads. Call the damn leads.
Hey, welcome back to Call the Damn Leads, the show by sales professionals for sales professionals. I'm your host, Drewbie Wilson. With more than 2 decades in sales, I've seen it, been through it, heard about it. Now I'm bringing those stories to you, my favorite people in the world, the sales community. Because let's be honest, this is the greatest job on earth. Doesn't matter where you come from, what background, what personality type, you can make an amazing life in sales. Today's guest, no stranger to the journey. I'd like to welcome Mr. Dusty Holcomb. Welcome to the show, sir.
Drewbie, awesome to be here. Thank you so much. What a great opportunity.
Hey, I appreciate you taking some time. And I want to jump right in, man. I want to hear your crazy sales story.
You know, it's so funny when I was reflecting on this and thinking about crazy sales story. I was 16 when I first learned what sales was. And I started in a men's high-end clothing retail store as a stock guy, right? You know, first job, W-2, like, holy crap. But the manager let me work on the counter on Saturdays, and then it was like, whoa, I really like this. This is fun to help people. And what I learned, like when I reflect back, it was one of the greatest learning experiences of my life, because what I learned about sales was you don't have someone walk in the store and you have to sell them what you want to sell them. You have to ask the right questions to understand what they need. And when you do that, and when you do that well, you can position your expertise to guide them to their solution, and they'll just buy. And so I went from 16-year-old stock boy within a year to being the number one salesperson, and I was working part-time 30 hours a week. And it was so cool because I never sold anybody anything. All I did was understand what they needed and make available great choices. And it was like, people would ask me, how'd you learn to do this? I didn't do anything. All I did was help educate. Sales is education. So that's how I started in my sales journey.
You know, I really appreciate that story. It makes me think about when I was in my early 20s. I had an opportunity to manage a cigar shop. I didn't start as the manager, though, right? I came in, I was a bouncer at the guy's club. He owned all kinds of shit across town. And he's like, hey, man, I need someone to do sales in the mornings. You interested? I'm like, yep, sign me up, boss. So same idea, though. I was like, man, I don't know anything about cigars. I'm 21 years old. I had never, I've smoked a cigar, but I don't know anything. But I took the approach you did of, anytime someone would buy something on repeat, I'd ask them, hey, what do you like about that cigar? What is the flavor profile? Is it strong? Is it mild? And of course I started trying them to learn, but it was just that people came in and you just ask them, hey man, what do you like? You want spicy? You want mild? You want strong? Let me just show you a couple options. And my whole goal was always if they normally spend $3, how do I get them to spend $4? How do I get them to spend $5? And it's so fun when you learn that sales doesn't have to be that aggressive, heavy. There's so many ways to be successful. And so when you think about your journey, who were some of the leaders or mentors that you kind of worked with along the way that really helped you refine the process that you have? Because I'm sure they gave you skills, but you had some of your own that they helped refine.
Yeah, I think about it a lot through the lens of leadership. You know, people say leaders are born. No, they're not. Leaders are born with characteristic. People are born with characteristics of leadership. And I think the same is true for sales, right? Great salespeople aren't born. They may be born with characteristics that enable them to be successful, but they have to learn the skill. So the person that comes to mind is Harry Snyder, and Harry was in that men's store. And one of the first things he taught me was, Dusty, I want to be very clear. Sales is not something you do to someone. It is something you do for someone. You are a guide in their journey. They're the hero. And so there's a great book, Donald Miller, Building a Story Brand, where it's talking about the hero's journey. That's what salespeople are. We are guides on the hero's journey, and it's not about us. And we can help them make great choices. And yes, we can go from a $3 spend to a $5 spend, et cetera. But it's because we're enabling them to make a choice that's going to make them happier. So Harry just helped me understand that. And then he also said, and if you want to do this and you want to do this well, you need to understand what you're selling. So I'm a 16, 17-year-old, 18-year-old kid selling $1,000 suits to corporate executives. I had no referential expertise. I had no business, but I could sit there and go, hey, Hickey Freeman came out with a new suit line this year. Here's the material. This is a worsted wool. It's because I read the books. Like I was that nerd that said, if I read these pamphlets, if I read these books, if I understand this, I can talk to the person with referential expertise so they trust me as a guide. And because they would trust my expertise, they'd be willing to invest whatever it was that they needed. So that's how you sell the $5 versus the $3. Is because you understand and you can converse like an expert. And I think that that's something that salespeople often forget, is that we're doing something to somebody. No. We're a guide in their journey, and we have to be the expert that they trust in that journey. And when they do, well, then, they're going to come back to us. They're going to come back again and again and again because you're the trusted advisor. So Harry was the first person that taught me that. And, I've had a lot of great sales leaders I've worked with or employed over the years. And it's always been about answering the question, how do we create value? And how do we create value? We create value through expertise.
That is an awesome story. And I'm chuckling inside thinking about the gentleman who I worked with at the cigar shop. His name was Harry.
No kidding. What a small world.
He'd been in the business for 25 years. He was there like through multiple owners, and he knew everything. And it's funny because for me to get the job as the manager, the guy who owned the place was like, hey man, if you want an extra, it was like $100 a week or something. It was not like a significant increase, but I was like, hell yeah, I want $100 a week. He's like, you got to go back and tell Harry that you're taking his position as the manager of the company. Now imagine, I'm 22, 23 years old. This guy's in his 60s. He's been running this shop for 20 years. And I come stumbling in like, all right, Harry, here's the deal, bub. I'm taking over as the manager. But I want to work together. I want you to help me. And really, I want you to think about this role as I'm like selling him on why this is such a great idea. And it's like, you're going to really have less responsibility, but you keep the same pay and everything goes the same. And he was like, really? And I was like, yep. All you got to do is just let me take over and help me do this thing so that you don't have to stress out. And like, I think you ended up getting like a little bit of a pay cut or something. It was like $25 a week. Or it wasn't like significant, but that was it, right? You just had to step in and own it. And just, I remember being 23 and thinking like, what the hell am I doing? I'm driving over there from the other shop, like 20 minutes away. And I'm just like, how am I even gonna? And so for you, if you could go back and talk to your younger self, like, right, you've been through so much now over the years, but if you could go back to like that young version, what would you say? What would you tell him?
Yeah, I would say be very present in these moments because you are forming foundational skills that will serve you for the rest of your career, because everything we do is sales. Everything we do is around trying to create value. So like those things that I learned at 16, 17, 18 years old were lessons that informed every interaction I've had in my corporate career since then. I haven't had direct sales leadership roles in a long time, but when I showed up as a CEO or I showed up as a president, man, you better believe I'm talking to everybody on our teams about our job is to create value for our client. We have to understand what we do so well that we can answer the questions about what they need, like everything. So I would have told myself, be fully present and revel in and capture these lessons. And there's probably a lot of things, Drewbie, that I don't recall now that I wish I had captured. But frankly, even just, preparing and thinking about these things for this conversation made me go, holy smokes, that was a really pivotal keystone moment in my life, learning how to do this, learning how to understand what value creation is. And that has informed my entire career. Every way I've shown up as a leader in a business has been about how do we create value for the client? Because if we create value for the client, they will come back to us. And that's what we have to do. And so my advice to myself would have been really capture these lessons. And 16, 17-year-old punk, I probably wouldn't have paid any attention to me at that point. But, I'd like to think that I would have.
Somewhere in the back of our minds, way back there under all the dust and the rubble, there's a comment from someone like us at our age now when we were young that we completely overlooked. But it's in there. And maybe someday we'll have that flashback, like, oh, shit, that guy did say that to me, Yeah. Or it's the ones where it's like someone said something and you got real spicy about it because you're like, you're wrong. Nah, you're wrong. And then you look back a few years later and you go, they were definitely right. Shit. I should call him. I should send him a message, right? Like I should tell him. And I
Totally.
think that's one of the fun things about this industry. This is why I created the podcast, and I've had hundreds of stories that we've shared now, because everyone comes into it from a different perspective or angle or reason. And yet so many of us who are in this trade have that similarity, that story of like, yep, been through something like that. Yep, been through something like that. And I think that's why so many of us, we get to that point where it's like we've been selling products, we've developed our craft, we're great at what we do, and we reach that pivotal moment of, do I keep doing it for someone else, or do I go and start my own thing?
Mm.
And there's no wrong route, you guys. I want to be the first one to say there is no wrong path here. But I'd be curious for you, Dusty, how did you end up on the path of entrepreneurship and kind of running your own thing?
It's a great question. I think I've always been an entrepreneur. My first entrepreneurial ventures were at 8 years old, creating a town newspaper that we sold at the corner mailbox. Now, we didn't understand market research very well. The town was population 250. We didn't have a really good opportunity to sell. Our TAM was very small, but those were the first things I did. I had my brother and I had a landscaping company with contracts and everything when we were like 11 and 8 years old. But until, a year and a half ago, I was a corporate, executive. I did everything for other businesses, but I was always the entrepreneur who would grow that and scale the new ideas, or I would take something from greenfield and flesh it out. But I love supporting entrepreneurs. Like I would be the guy who would have this new entrepreneurial venture. A company comes to mind, one of my favorite brands, Free Fly. When they had their first shirt or two, I was like, oh, I like that. They're a bunch of cool guys who are starting something. I want to be part of that. And I think that was the thing, is I wanted to be part of their journey and their story. And so when I left my last role as the CEO, I was like, you know what? I can go do that again, but I really want to be part of someone else's journey. And in order for me to do that, I have to take a leap of faith and start something for myself. And, from a sales perspective, and I've told sales leaders this and salespeople this for a long time now, I say, you have arrived as a sales professional when you can recognize that there are opportunities you should say no to. When you're not so focused on the sale, but you are really good at going, this is not an opportunity. I can't serve you well and meet your need. And so instead of selling something to you, I'm going to help you navigate to whatever your right solution is. And, and so when I started this journey, it was really around, I want to make sure that I can help the people and serve the people who need what I do and be able to say no to the others. Because I do think from a sales professional perspective, you've arrived when you know when to say no and you know how to say no.
Oh man, you just hit on something that I love talking about at length, which is the pre-qualification process of sales. And I think a lot of people, they're struggling with confidence. So that's a great way that you explain it. Like when you're confident enough to say no. And so what I think about is, what are the questions that we're asking every one of our prospects? And how are we using their responses to determine, A, I'm a good fit to help solve their problem or get them the thing that they're looking for, from a desire perspective. And also that they're the client that I want to work with. Because not all business is good business.
Amen.
And it can be so hard when you're in a slump and you're like, man, I got these bills come in and I got this going on. But you have to hold strong, because the best clients, they pay the invoice and they get to work. And you spend 20% of your time with those people, and you're spending 80% of your time chasing all the people that you took on, even though your gut said, eh. And so, Dusty, you're laughing because you've had those experiences. But when you're thinking about from a leadership perspective, right? Because if we're teaching others how to go through and be strong in this process, like what are the questions that you can ask, or what are some of the ways that we can make sure that we're really helping people understand the reasoning behind the actions that they're taking?
I love that question. And it is about asking the right questions and it's about really listening. So, first thing, understand your product value promise at an exceptionally deep level. Know exactly where your own product or offering creates value for your target customer. Ask questions then that help you understand, does what they need and will value match what you deliver? Because if you have a value need mismatched with a value offering, it doesn't matter how hard you work, they're not going to be happy because you're looking for different things. So those questions, and so I can think of a very specific example. Last role as the CEO, I would often be the heavy or the closer or the managing the high opportunity leads that were coming through our pipeline. And we had a prospect that desperately wanted to do business with us. He and I were engaging one-to-one. It escalated past my VP of sales, and I'm talking to this client or this prospect, and he would say, I want to do business with you. Here's my evaluation grid. Here's everyone else I am considering. I want you to see you are at the top of my list. I want to do business with you. As a salesperson, that's a T-ball right down the, that's just a home run waiting to be hit.
You can't even miss. You just walk up.
Yeah, it's fish in a barrel. Here's the problem. I knew that what he wanted and needed was not what we were built to deliver. And so therefore, if we signed him as a customer, we would fail him. Our brand promise would be at risk. We would not be able to satisfy him. Could we do the work? Yes. Could we do it to maybe 80% of what he wanted? Yes. But that wasn't good enough. And so I had to tell him, hey, John, man, I would love to do business with you. I'm going to have to tell you no, and here's why. I am afraid that we would not be able to satisfy your need, and that a year from now or 6 months from now or 2 years from now, you're going to be frustrated because I am not built to do what you're asking us to do. And from a brand alignment, from a values alignment, from a cultural alignment, we are simpatico, but we will not fail you. And I will not put our organization in a position to fail your needs where you receive less value than you want. And I'm capturing my own value. So we can't extract value from others if we're not delivering more than they paid us. And so that's job number one from a sales leadership perspective. How do we ensure that when they sit down at the end of the transaction, at the end of the engagement, mid-cycle, whatever it is, they can in their head go, I can't believe this is all they're charging because I get so much more value than I'm paying. That's the value equation we have to solve for. So we have to ask the right questions to understand, does their value need match up with our value delivery? And if there's not a perfect match, we've got to solve for that because our job is to create value or they should fire us.
Masterclass. If I had a mic drop button, I could do like a...
I'm pretty passionate about this.
I can feel that. And one of the things that I really love about this conversation is the depth of understanding that you have around the process. And this is going to be a little bit of a shift of gears, but those of you who are paying attention, I think this is really important for you because how you do anything is how you do everything. And one thing I know personally is that when I was being very focused and intentional on my personal fitness, my mindset, all the other pieces that correlate with that confidence aspect of sales, my life changed. And Dusty, I'm pretty sure I seen that you did like 5 Ironman races or something at some point. Am I crazy?
No, you're not crazy. I was crazy. I was the one doing them.
Okay. So I want to talk about this because I love endurance sports. Like to me, I've never done an Ironman. It's on my list of like dream goals someday. But I've done the century bike rides, 200 miles in a day. I've rode 50,000 meters. I've done the marathon, all that. So I'm confident that I could do it all. Totally. But it's stringing it all together that like just scares the shit out of me. And I think it's the perfect correlation for sales. So I want you to touch on like as you're doing these long, grueling, just mind-wrecking endurance feats, what do you think correlates that to the sales process and everything that goes along with it, because I'd love your perspective.
All right. So I love the way you frame that. And here's where my head goes viscerally. It's you have to have a plan, and you have to have an understanding of the plan. And you don't go create a sales process on a sale on the first call, right? But you have a process of discovery. You have a process of education. You have a process of value creation. You have a process of follow through. Like, you have processes and checkpoints that you do, and you do them when you don't want to. You do them when you don't feel like it. You do them because you know that if you are consistent in the application of proven process, you will be successful more times than not. And because the people, amateurs, they do work when they're inspired. Pros do the work day in, day out, always. So endurance sports is the same thing. Like, when I was racing Ironman, and like, I'm not a 5'8", 110-pound guy. I'm a linebacker. I'm 6'4". At racing weight, I'm 215.
Yeah.
So I'm a big dude. And I've many people on an Ironman course will go, wow, that's a really big, ugly dude out there. Well, what are you doing? I'm racing against type. But what you do is, the race is the reward. You plan the work, you work the plan, you do it when you don't feel like it. There are many days where I would wake up on a Thursday morning, which was my long run day, and go, today's an 18-mile day. I don't feel like it. It's raining, it's cold, it's hot. But if I want to show up on race day and enjoy the experience and have fun and be successful, I got to do the work. And I got to do the work when I don't want to. And so I think from a sales psychology perspective, because like, salespeople have to be good at hearing the words NO, and in their heads, translating that to not yet. I haven't earned the right to talk to you. I haven't earned the right to give you value. I haven't proven myself worthy as your guide. So the answer is not yet. The answer is, I need to understand. And then when the answer is no, the answer is no. But like, you got to show up. You have to have a resilient psychology. I've learned more about myself on the backside of an Ironman marathon than I have in almost any other time in my life, because you go inwards and you shut out all the noise and all the distractions. And I think that's what sales requires you to do. You just have to you have to persevere. And, I did 5 Ironman races, and the dumbest thing I did was 2 of them 3 weeks apart. And the second one's really hurt. But you just go inside and you just trust the process and you do the work. And then you show up, and the race is a reward. Like, every race I did, loved it. Absolutely loved it. It was so much fun because I had done the work.
And it was miserable and grueling and awful. And the whole time you're doing it, you're questioning, like, what is wrong with me? And then you hit the finish line and you look around and you enjoy and embrace that inner, like, first of all, the dopamine and serotonin.
Oh, man.
Very few drugs like it on the world, you guys. Like, I've done a lot of stuff in my days. And, like, the finish of a long race like that, very, very few things like it in the world. And sales is the same way. Your favorite, the best deals, the stories that I've heard from people on this show over the years all come back to, I just didn't know. But I kept trusting the process. I kept making the calls. I kept doing the follow-up. And eventually, we got to that sweet, sweet finish line. And so, Dusty, man, we could sit and nerd out about this for several hours. I already know that we're going to be connecting more offline because I absolutely love your story. However, I want to be respectful. How do we come find you, follow you, check out more of your content? Because I know this is just the tip of the iceberg for the value that you provide your audience, man.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And I'd love to connect with folks. You can find me on LinkedIn, Dusty Holcomb. One thing I've got for your audience very specifically, and I think this really works well for sales leaders and salespeople, is I put together what I call a rules of engagement guide. And so what this does is it allow you to communicate to others, here's what's important to me, here's how I'll show up, here's what you need to know about me, especially in sales leadership roles. And so if folks want to go to Arcus, arcqus.news, they can sign up. I'll send them the rules of engagement guide. It's a workbook that they can go through and then capture who they are, what matters to them, how their teams can show up most effectively for them. And then you share it with your team. I work with every team I work with, CEOs, key executives. We go through a rules of engagement process, and it's amazing how much clarity helps teams move faster. And I can't think of any place where I want more clarity than in my sales organizations, because they are the ones that are driving the success of the organization. It's a falsehood where people say, hey, sales fixes everything. It doesn't fix everything. You can have underlying problems, but man, if I have to fix one thing and get it right first, it's going to be the sales engine. So I've got that as a gift for your audience, arcus.news. And I'd love to connect with folks online. LinkedIn's a great place, and hit me up in chat. This is obviously this is stuff I nerd out about. This is fun.
Well, you guys know what to do. If you enjoyed the show, you got some value out of it, go share it on social media. Maybe send it to someone you know who's kind of sucks at providing value first, right? They just jump right into the pitch. You don't have to tell them they suck, but just send them this episode. Say, hey, I listened to it. I was thinking of you. Figured you might get some value. Check it out. And then go follow Dusty. Go check out all his material. If you have a story and you want to be on the show, head over to callthedamnleads.com/podcast. Send us your details. We'll get you plugged in. Then grab yourself a hat, keychain, wristband, maybe a shirt or a hoodie. Support the movement, because you know what to do. Go pick up the phone. Call the damn leads. We'll see you guys next time.
When the doubt gets loud, but answer that call. Vision ain't real till you grind that speed, so breathing deep. Then call the damn leads. Call the damn leads.